Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here this evening. She's an experienced design leader and innovation strategist, working with organizations to create meaningful experiences that deliver competitive advantage. A pioneer of experience in the experience design field, she uses it as a strategic tool for transformation at Fortune 100 companies, tech startups, governments, and non-governmental organizations, as well as product management for clients in social innovation, e-commerce, portals, knowledge platforms, and multilingual web applications. A passionate advocate for design, for the value of design in solving business problems. She takes a humanistic, multidisciplinary approach to creating experiences that fit into our lives. Having lived and worked in Lebanon and in the USA, her work displays awareness towards the interplay between design and culture. She has 3 patent applications pending, and her work has won several industry awards. I'm talking about you at the end, I have to be stressed. She taught experience design at the School of the Art of Institute of Chicago, a program she introduced and established in 1999. Please help me in welcoming Hala Khamisi.
مساء الخير. فيكم تسمعوني مظبوط؟ Yeah, good. Thank you for being here. بيشرفني إني أكون معكم اليوم. اللكشر حتكون in English. I hope that's okay. في كلمة عربي هون وهنيك بس most of the work is done in English, so I hope that's okay. بس طمنكم إنه استعملت صور كتير حلوة, so hopefully it's not that boring and you'll get something out of it. I want to take a minute and thank AUB. I want to thank the Department of Architecture and Design, all my wonderful teachers, Mr. Rawas, Samir Sayegh, the Ghaibe twins, and especially Laila Musfi. In my opinion, she transformed the visual culture of the Middle East in the past 20 years through her students. And I think this lecture and the whole event is a nod of respect to her achievements through her students. Thank you. Today's talk, I should have brought my stepping stool or something. Can you see me? Okay, good. فكرت جيب سلم معي بس I thought it was too heavy. So today we're going to cover quite a bit actually. Who is here is not a designer? Who's a designer, creative architect? Okay, so we have a mixed, good. Okay, so we're going to be alternating. It's not going to be all design and process. We're going to be going back and forth between high-level conversations and detailed process. For anyone who's into tweeting, I do have a hashtag. You can also reach me on this information. The hashtag is designing business. I do have a small consulting company called the Experience Design Bureau. You can reach me on the email. Also LinkedIn, Skype. Feel free to get in touch. Would love to take the conversation further at any time. So a little bit about me. I studied graphic design in 1991. بلشت in political science. I started in political science, and I did 4 years of graphic design. Was on the first batch, the guinea pigs, as Laila says. Went to Chicago, did my master's at the Art Institute of Chicago for 2 years, and then right away went into the web industry. Started out as a marketing web designer at Giant Step, built the first Vidal Sassoon Oldsmobile websites, designed them, I should say, not build them. Then went on to Viant, where I met Hani Asfour. He's right here, a key also influencer in my career, thank you. And then I became a partner at a small consulting firm called Pathfinder. Most of the work and most of my ideas about user experience design were born in those 5 years. And then I joined Tandem 7, where I started to work a little bit more on design strategy. The past 5 years, I've been doing independent consulting, lecturing, and innovation workshops around the world and in the US. Let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I'm specialized in user experience design, and it's a new discipline. It's an evolving craft that's spreading at the speed of the web. It's a holistic framework that concerns itself with the human experience in its totality, regardless of the medium, channel that we're looking at. It combines methods from various disciplines of the industrial age into a coherent approach that allows us to envision what it's like to be living online. Because of the web, experience design is a pivotal mark in design's history. It's an evolution in its power, impact, and reach. A couple of slides about projects I've worked on. This is the project that's in the exhibit book that Noor Kanafani beautifully put together. It was a strategy project for Oprah.com. The goal for that project was to transition, to prepare for the transition of Oprah leaving the show. And we started working 5 years earlier on the roadmap to grow organic content and utilize the pyramid of experts to allow engagement and maximize throughput via blogs across all channels, the show online, as well as messaging, blogging, articles, connecting it all so that we can help the users design their life using the rich content that Oprah has. The other project I want to bring up is cross-brand consumer product e-commerce solution for Whirlpool and Maytag. On the left, you find the visual design. On the right, you see a sample of information architecture, a wireframe. This particular project I brought here, I wanted to share with you to emphasize specifically the power of sketching as a tool to communicate ideas. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. This particular project was for mobile healthcare. Another highlight is the Grainger projects that I've been doing for the past year and a half. Grainger is a large industrial supplier. I worked on next generation sales experience vision, HR portals, and as you see on the side also conceptual sketching for that experience. And that's where the 3 patents were filed. I'll throw a party and invite you when we get them. The last project I have, which was launched actually the past month, is a startup called User Experience Accelerator. And the startup, does a very specific job. It helps bridge the gap in UX talent. We basically recruit designers, developers, researchers, and train them bootcamp style to become junior user experience architects and place them at different clients around the Chicago area. We are looking to grow and get designers from all over the world and expand as well in other cities. The main construct is that with the basic system thinking that designers and developers have and researchers, we are able to put them through 4 weeks of training to turn them into junior user experience architects that are immediately placed within 4 weeks. And within 1 year of coaching, they can become mid-level user experience architects. And the main differentiator about what we do is that we place the candidate in the middle of a triangular formation, which is a design expert coach, a placement support from a placement agency, and a client who is willing to grow junior talent into senior user experience architect. And what ends up happening is that those candidates when placed have a career that's launched and a unique mentorship program that allows them to grow and be supported while their career is growing. The results of the past month was 5 designers were launched and 5 designers launched their careers, and a client became very happy because they had a way to scale their user experience design team. Now, the reason I brought this example up is because it crystallizes a very important message that Layla Musfi taught us when we were at AUB. And the main idea is that unlike art, design is a method to solve a business problem. In the beginning of my career and throughout the school years, for me, it was about designing communication, posters, identity systems, menus, and my concern was at the first layer of contact, messages, visuals, and identity. As my career progressed, when I got to the US, I was in the middle of the web boom in the early 2000s. And we were, as user experience designers, back then we were not really called user experience designers, we were called web designers. We were concerned with a visual layer as well. And as time went on and the web matured, the role of web designers grew, and we moved a bit deeper and started applying systems thinking to much larger questions. And so what I'm going to tell you today is the story of how this happened. When I started working in 1998, a new technology was emerging. It was a time of massive change. The world was flattened. It was open, exceedingly interconnected, and in real time. There was a huge change and progress. It was accelerating across industries, from humans working around technologies to features designed around human comfort, pleasure, and use. In computing, the wind of change were blowing online as well. The second transformation of the new computing was the shift from machine-centered automation to user-centered surfaces and tools. And so we were moving from a world that works around technologies to a world designed around human beings. And so the big question was, how do we humanize the web? User experience design was the answer, because it solves the human unmet needs by providing engaging solutions and meaningful experiences. It asks what is needed. It asks how can business offer a solution, and how can technology support that solution. The role of the designer was to architect experiences, thinking how we can engage users, how we can capture their attention, how can we create emotions, and what are those key performance indicators that we need to measure over time. So let's go a little bit deeper into how we do this and what is the user experience design process. Jesse James Garrett beautifully illustrates the history of user experience design simply by looking at the progress of those three infographics over the past decade, plus or minus, give and take. You can see the evolution of this craft. How we first were thinking about it in terms of surface, skeleton, structure, scope, and strategy, to how we started looking at it in terms of visual design, and over time that became sensory design. We started looking at product as functionality, just like we design tools, and just like we design chairs and knives, we design products online that satisfy a specific person. And then you also find another aspect of that experience, which is more informational, like the websites. To illustrate this, I'm going to talk a little bit about the project that's in the exhibit. It's a case study that I'm going to share with you for the Qatar Education Supreme Council. It was part of an educational reform effort, multi-million-dollar over 10 years, where we built applications and designed and built applications in Arabic and in English. It was built for a specific audience, for a specific purpose. As you can see on the top in Arabic, at the bottom in English. The other is a paper that I wrote about the process, and that's really what started my career, if I could say. The process that we used was very thorough. Just like any other design process, there's multiple phases. There's a lot of design players. You have the visual art, you have the visual designer, you have the information architect, you have the usability, you have the researcher, you have front-end development, you have business players who are involved on a day-to-day basis. There was front-end developers and back-end engineers that we needed to work with and collaborate with over a very long period of time, exactly 2 years, iterating day and night on those applications that we were building for those users that were halfway across the world. And we had to figure out a design process that works. We had to figure out a way to understand the requirements, what they need to do, and design and build technology that answers that need. So we started by looking at the users. If we cannot see them, that doesn't mean we cannot design for them. We actually started role-playing in the office. We started thinking about what each user needs, and that's what drove the design. We lived and breathed their life. We started eating their food. Some folks started even fasting with us in Ramadan, so that we know what it feels like to fast and work at the same time. So we started thinking about their unmet needs. What is it that they want out of the experience? What are the key tasks? What are the goals? What are the expectations? And what are their mental models? We designed personas and high-level flows to understand really quickly what is it and how they can get in and out and get what they need done as fast and as efficient as possible. Then we started looking more into the flows of their tasks. What buttons they might need, what screens lead to what screens, what are the steps, and how do you navigate a very specific application built to meet your need. We mapped it out like a city. There is no difference between thinking about an application architecture and how a city flows. You have to think about how people can get from A to B. You have to think about wayfinding and how they navigate, how you can speed up in the moment what they need, and how can the application help them without interrupting what they are trying to achieve. We built wireframes that were also close to a task flow because that's what you do for applications. Then we blew it up in complete wireframes, and we translated those into Arabic and English when we got to the visual design. That whole process was a complete collaboration between a multitude of designers, iterating day and night with many other teammates, developers, business, and we worked on this, and for me, it was one of the best projects I ever worked on. We didn't sleep for 2 years, but it was lots of fun. In the past decade, our relationship with the web matured. We are living in a connected, hyper-contextual, geolocal, instant, personal, social, low-cost data world. All those trends that are on the screen in front of you are not end-to-end, but I wanted to give an idea about what happened in the past decade to anchor the conversation. It's a mega picture, not a chronological order, but a listing of social and technological movements that stand out in the past 10 years, which also affected how design is consumed and how it is practiced. To the extent that really we think nothing right now about the fact that we live something new. And design gained a bigger role on the table as a strategic business tool that supports decision-making, not only execution of products and services. In my work, for example, the questions, the engagements, the projects that I was starting to get were very different than 10 years ago. It was more about how do we sell across channels? How do we engage our customers? Not just executing websites and launching new ones. I don't want to be, cliche here or repetitive. I'm sure you've read a lot about Apple and how their innovation process, system, and platform thinking changed or revolutionized the way we relate to each other. But I just wanted to put it in the presentation as a marker for the splash that they made around the role of design in transforming our world. The other case study that I want to bring up is about IBM. The Blue Giant in 2012 created a design center led by the head of business process management. And that really anchors the point around what it means that design thinking now completely is inside the business processes. It blurs the line between process and experience design. The fact that a business process manager, the head of BPM in IBM, is now leading the design center gives us an indication of how things are changing. So all of a sudden now, we are looking not at designing experiences as designers, but we are really looking at architecting business value. By fully embracing users and customer centricity in product and service innovation, as well as internal processes, design continues to perfect the experience of integrating technology and design thinking into our world. Design thinking moves businesses to become more human. It pushes the boundaries. It allows us to understand what the users desire in a business, not only in an experience. It allows us to define what the technology and push the boundaries of what it can do and ask the questions, are the business values scalable? Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what happened here. So all of a sudden now we're looking at designers becoming design thinkers, and what they do become radically different. They start empathizing with businesses, they start looking at visualizing what that means, co-creating with business partners, and iterating. Let's go a little bit deeper into what that process, how that process goes. Empathizing, visualizing, co-creating, and iterating. The main construct behind all those steps really is about learning, creating, and repeating iteratively. I'm not going to go in depth into each one of those because that will probably take a lot of time. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to dive deeper into one section, which is around empathy. What I mean by empathy as a design thinker in a business context is really understanding the project, the people, the competitors, understanding not only the users, empathizing with them, but also empathizing with your business owner and what the market demands. Once that is understood, what we usually do is we facilitate a huddle so that everybody is aligned, is on the same page. Then we get feedback and we go to the next step. We get into research, first-hand research, secondary research, try to understand what is the gap that the business is trying to achieve, what are those unmet needs. And we try to create a synthesis, a story around what the business can do. Then we connect the dots, we frame the story, and we envision an end goal so that the team is aligned and everybody is on board. To give you a sample of what that might look like, this is a format I use quite a bit in kind of almost architecting the conversation and documenting what we find out in terms of our work. What is it that I know about the business? What do we know about the users? What is it that we need to find out? And what is it that we know for sure? What are the constraints, the time frame, and the thoughts? And then we write all of this in more human terms. What is it that we need to create? And what is the goal for the user? So now that we talked a little bit about user experience design and a little bit about design thinking, I want to try to connect the dots here. So if we go back to the main construct that design is a method to solve a business problem, and user experience designers create engagement, attention, and emotions, and design thinkers use the method as a tool to support decision-making by empathizing, visualizing, co-creating, and iterating, there's a shift in the role of designers. There's a transformation. We are no longer only consumed by creating engagement, attention, and emotion, but also we have to become the voice of reason. Empathy, we have to be effective problem solvers, we have to become facilitators, so that the goals are clear for everybody, the team is aligned, and the vision and the culture is clear. Business designers are needed that are humble, that are critical. They are critical, innovative, and realistic. They know how to sell not only to end users, but they know how to sell a goal and a vision to everybody on the team and to their business clients. So if we connect this all together, what we're looking at is empathetic, effective problem solvers who know how to use design as a process to diagnose different layers of the problem, be it experience, business structure, value architecture, who are able to design it and deliver it into the world as opportunities, solutions, and prototypes. Designing business becomes architecture of value. User experience becomes about products and services, and team experience is more about guiding internal culture. Thank you. So I know it hopefully wasn't too boring. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't get what the project was. I mean, it was an application for what exactly?
So there was education reform effort in Qatar back in early 2000s. And the idea was to design applications for specific use. The pitch was around using the web to support educational transformation. And what we did is basically we designed an experience where everybody involved in an education, in the educational system, be it the parents, the teachers, the schools, or the students themselves, have a platform to communicate. That was the vision. What we ended up doing is actually very different. We ended up designing applications for enumerating everybody in the country so we can build the databases that hold the information of everyone. And that was one application. We called it the fall application because that's when everybody took the laptops and went around the country and basically took the names and addresses and information. Basically, it's like a census of everyone. The other application was more around documenting the tests that were given as benchmarking tools. So the two applications that were built over those 2 years were very much built for specification and to achieve a certain goal, help a user achieve a very specific goal.
That, and you just showed just like one basic visual for the graphic that came out of that.
Yeah.
And that sounded like a lot of work for very database-looking graphics.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain, please?
Yes.
Or show more.
Show more. The actual reel of this is in the exhibit, and it shows, I believe, this particular application. And the visual design process for that particular project was very interesting. What we had to do is basically create something that's very functional. Remember, that was pre-iPhone. It was applications that were built for a specific purpose. At the time, the models we had were informational websites. And what we did is basically look at the users and their environment, and we tweaked the colors over time. We tweaked the design over time. We started with something that was a little bit more elaborate that you see at the bottom, and moved it to something less elaborate that you see at the top. So that was year one, that was year two. And this was the census application that was used during the fall time. This one is also another, you can see the colors, how they've changed. We basically, the feedback we got was, we want something that pops. So we changed it to something that's a little bit more streamlined and that supports the action. So colors were used to support the action that the user was trying to do in the specific screens. Natalie?
Hello, I'm going to travel a bit back in time in regards to your move from your schooling, from your graphic design studies at AUB, and then becoming a user experience designer. Practically speaking, can you tell us what it took? Practically speaking, in very simple terms.
What it took? Flexibility. Being humble, learning, the fact knowing that what we're doing is not perfect, and that's okay. And what we do is we learn. It wasn't just me, it was Hani, who was also in the same period there. We were basically, Ziyad was there as well with us at Viant. We really were trying to just understand the web and figure out a way to use what we know to help us manage it, design it, tweak it to our needs. So as designers, everybody was pulling in. I remember days where it was really, we had fine artists, we had illustrators, we had information architects, basically library studies. We had visual designers, and we were all trying to mash tools together so that we are able to figure out what does the client want, what does this medium allow us to do, and create those deliverables. The process that I showed you was circa 2005, and I believe I have that even on there, because it is changed drastically since then. All those steps now are done much more iteratively and much shorter period of time. We call it lean UX or agile within agile development. So the steps are the same. If you look at this picture, it's really a toolbox. And those tools and those activities did not really change. Every design agency at the time, not many of them were in the web. Our little boutique design agency was solely on the web. So we had the luxury to work on a methodology like this one and create a palette and a tool set that we draw from. But all those steps really did not change. Now we apply them differently. We apply them in shorter periods of time, more iteratively, but it is really the same methods that we are improving as time goes by. So if I can sum it up, it's really just being iterative. It's the only way. And just knowing that every time you do something, you get better at it. Now, what it took to do that is a lot of openness to pulling from other disciplines. User experience design is not, let me go back to the illustration, because I think that really illustrates big time what is UX and what it's not. And it really shows, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah. It really shows all the disciplines that we pull from. So you basically have architecture, industrial design, human factors, motion design, communication design. All of those disciplines we pull pieces of them and we use them and we create those deliverables that we implement on projects. And that's the beauty of UX, is that it is just born, it's still a baby, it's changing, and it's growing. I would say now it's 10 years old. Soon enough, it's going to be a teenager, Allah sayadna. But it's fascinating to be at a moment when a design discipline is born and be in it and part of, I had the luxury of being part of the inner working of what it is and what it does. I don't know if I'm talking too much, so I don't know if I answered your questions. Right. Yeah.
So the term web designer is like antique, is primitive because they're like digital designer, user experience designer, web designer, so it evolved or?
Very good question. Thank you for asking that. It's, to me, I'm going to be a little bit harsh, and I'm going to go with the answer of it doesn't really matter what we call it. Everywhere in the world, in the US and Europe, here, talking to colleagues, the confusion about what it's called remains, really. Different cultures call their teams differently. Some people call the visual designers web designers. Some people call information architects user experience architects. I am more of the classic kind. I stick to the Jesse James Garrett, and I'm going to pull it up just to have a visual frame of reference here. To me, that is really, his book is the Bible. Because it's very methodically telling us the roles and responsibilities and the structure of the teams and a good understanding of the process and the method. I highly recommend this book. Agencies have different ways of calling their designers. Different UX teams embedded within large organizations like at Grainger or Sears or Leo Burnett, each one, some of them call it interaction design, some of them call it user experience design, some of them call it experience design. A new term is being used now, and I am a big proponent of, which is design strategy, which comes before experience design, and that's what this whole thing is about, is a team of design thinkers who come and define the what, not just the how. User experience design talks about the how we implement a solution. We want somebody to buy a washing machine. That's a how. That's a design that makes us figure out how they're going to buy it. Design strategy comes up front and allows for design thinkers to figure out, do we really need to sell only washing machines, or do we have other things to sell? Or how are we going to sell it? So the frame of reference really is moving target. Up until today, there is no oneness. The debates rage on blogs everywhere. What should we call it? I think there is more alignment under user experience design more than anything else, but I'm not going to say that it's done. I would say TBD. We will see in 10 years.
I have a question about educating. What would you recommend to universities to start producing user experience designers? We don't have that as a discipline.
Yeah.
What's the course of action or a roadmap to start introducing this in the curriculum?
You gotta hire me to get that. Here. I think that user experience design is highly needed. As I showed you in my startup that I launched back in March, we did this simply because there is not enough user experience designers in America. It's very simple. Anyone who's up for going, talk to me over there. But it's highly needed because it became a core expertise in businesses. Every IT team has a user experience designer on the team. If you don't, you're pretty much dead. Every business has user experience design teams embedded within the business. You simply cannot have enough. Calls, tens and hundreds of calls to everybody I know really on a daily basis does not begin to tell about how deep the need is. To solve this, educational systems are not necessarily taking the bull by the horn, let's say. They're being a little bit too passive, and businesses are hurting big time. And so what we've done is we've basically put this bootcamp style. Now, if we, bootcamp style basically taking designers who already have system thinking and the basics design tools and that we can build on. So the bootcamp is not in any way to substitute proper design education like the one that Laila Musfi has at AUB. It's something that you can build on top of. Now, what is the content? What is that map looking like? I would think that it's probably based on a process like this, being a little bit more modular and flexible, allowing for the reality of the business world to seep into the education. In the real world, we rarely go end to end. It's more, we get pieces, we put it in a little box, we execute, we learn, and we iterate. And that's what I feel, that iteration, that speed, that quickness, that's what I think we need to build into the basics of design. Sketching, simply because it saves a lot of time. It allows us to prototype and take uncertainty out by not spending a lot of money on a lot of effort, is a huge, huge indicator of ability to communicate and quickness in mind to design quickly solutions. So that's a key thing that I hired for in all of my design teams, and even for the students the candidates that we take into the startup and UXA, that's definitely a big thing. So I believe that taking the real world business into consideration, teaching flexibility, modularity, the three points that I mentioned, which are humility, I think these are the core characteristics of good designers, because I do believe we're moving beyond user experience design and into design thinking. So humility, ability to realize that design is not about me, it's about the business, it's about a user. And my role as a designer is to make them come together, facilitate that oneness, if you will. Teaching them innovative, critical thinking. Now, how do you do that? Some people are probably born with it, but I do think that we can change and educate our students to be realistic and have a critical eye to what's going on, understanding what's going on in the world and big picture, and really teaching the subtle arts of selling. Listening, basically. That's what selling is. It's listening to what the other is saying, which goes back to empathy. And I feel if we have those three characteristics in the design curriculum, if we can measure on it, if we can teach it, along with, of course, the technical tools that we have, I think that would be a very good curriculum.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. You probably already answered part of the question, but I'm wondering, when you referenced the time back in the early 2000s when you and Annie and myself used to be in the same office, and back then we were making it up, or we were almost improvising as we were starting this whole thing. It was brand new. Mm-hmm. But even back then, even though we were guessing, we were using pretty much the same concepts you referenced right now, in the sense that we were trying to use design to bridge the gap between businesses and their customers. And remember, we used to do basing the life of, and we used to try and be as customer focused as possible, and so on. So I'm just wondering, I left this whole thing 10 years ago, so I'm wondering now, your 10-year-old process that you're referencing, has it changed? How has it changed in 10 years? Is it still the same process? Is it more complicated? What has become of it in 10 years? Especially that back then we used to think digital and physical, and now they're much more merged, obviously, as much more of a cohesive experience. So I'm wondering, how has that process evolved? What does it look like now versus what it was like when it was starting 13 years ago?
Yeah, I'll tell you the big change. The big change is we don't have to fight for it anymore. So 10 years ago, we had to prove that we bring value. Today, we're invited to the table. We are celebrated as the ones who have the answer. So designers in the United States today are critical core competency in any business. across industries, not only in design agencies. I'm talking industrial suppliers who have a team of 50 designers. The change that happened is technology, the technical teams, the development teams accept design not as something they have to do, as something they want, because they've realized that no more can they build things without our input as representatives of the human aspect of the experience. So not only are they working with us, they are changing us. And that's where this toolbox that I showed remains the toolbox that I use, but it's applied differently. And because everybody is now grew up with the web and this process, you get different flavors, I can't tell you that I do the same thing everywhere I go. I have this toolbox, I know how to use it, and I know how to apply this and this in conjunction with this and that in this particular context to achieve what the team wants, what the business is trying to get to. That's what has changed. The trust, the level of trust that before, these people come after the fact, these people are the ones we come to make things pretty. Not anymore. These are the people that come to help us figure out what is it that we want to do and how we're going to do it. How is user experience design? What is design thinking? And that is the key difference. The tools, more or less, design research came into the picture, playing much bigger role. Design research now is, back in our days, we really couldn't we barely got budget to do information architecture. But today, it's built into the project plans. It's happening constantly. Always, we have user researchers bringing information for the user experience architect to take into consideration. The process goes much faster. We have sprints, we have agile methodologies that are changing design. So we basically have to do the same thing, but over and over again and much, much quicker. So instead of waiting 3 months for the design to be done, there's nothing like that anymore. We have to do 3-week iteration, 2-week iteration, get something out the door. Because the longer the business waits, the more money we lose. So the quicker we can get an answer and test a prototype or an idea, the earlier we can get to the right answer and the faster we can launch the business. I don't know if I answered your question.
How do you draw the line between simplicity and giving the user more options or more customized to be?
Great question. I think they tell you in one way or another what's right. When we go out to do ethnography or research or hang out with them to see how they live and what is it that we need to design for, you get a sense as a designer what's right and what's wrong. Just like when you have a feeling whether this type is right or this type is not right, has size or this, you get a mental model in your head about what makes sense for that user. The good thing about it though is because there is usability, you always get to test it. So you always get a chance to, did my gut deliver the right answer? Did I make the right decision? So I would say you never really know until it's done. And simplicity is a big aspect of what we do. I find that less is more always. It's less about the features and more about how the features flow into the task. So it's really more about how can I make this experience flow smoothly without interruptions, bringing options to the user at the moment when they need it without interruptions or forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. To me, flows are way more important than features. And then if you have an applications where all the features flow together to achieve the goals that you have outlined as in the personas or in the earlier on discussions with the team, that's when you have a successful solution because the team agrees. Remember, in user experience design, you're never a solo designer. You don't take that responsibility. The team has a responsibility. You are one person. You have your researcher, you have your usability, you have your visual designer, you have your interaction designer, depending again on the culture and what they're called within those teams. You have your front-end developers, you have the back-end engineers, you have the project manager, you have the business. It's a team environment. Your job is to facilitate, your job is to bring the human, your job is to align everybody on the same page. But at the end, it's a team conversation. And the innovation happens in those team conversations. That's when sometimes reduction happens and simplicity becomes something that everybody, if you don't want it, somebody else does. And that's what probably you'll end up going with.
I just have a small question. So basically this is all targeted towards making the user's experience more simple and flowing easily. But what happens when you need to teach the user a new behavior, or you want to teach the user how to do something in a new way, or teach a new habit? Then how does that change your process? How does it change how you have to tackle the whole design issue?
Very good question. I think that it really depends on a lot of earlier on testing and prototyping. I think that gives you that certainty, that trust that what you have will work. I think there's a lot of mental models that exist today that people are used to. And so borrowing on what's familiar is something that I use all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't innovate. It just means you portray a sense of comfort where users are able to engage and grasp what it is that you're trying to do a little bit easier. And you increase adoption that way. To me, it's always, I think in the US there's a much higher acceptance of new things. Twitter, Facebook. People they take risks, but I think what they do even better is that they listen. So when something doesn't work, they change it, and they change it quickly, and they change it effectively. And I think that's the key thing, is when you find out that something doesn't work, it did not get adopted, you took maybe a bigger risk and the market is not responding, switch it right away. And that's where the speed and the iterations come in the process. That's the beauty of it, is that once something works, that nobody will remember the first iteration. It's actually part of it. Any other questions?
Thank you, Hala.
Thank you.